Hi there, Guy again. So, are you, we, us willing to consider that perhaps most of what we call reality is made up? That we make it up? That we are responsible for this thing that we call reality? So I'm going to open this up for us to have a good look at it. Some people call this inquiry, or just looking at it, or just exploring, asking questions, studying, being a bit rigorous with the way we use our perception and our awareness to find out and see what seems to resonate to be most true with us. So I hope you're all ears, all eyes, all hearts, all minds, and ready for this adventure into meaning. So let's look at this from one way, which is the things that we might say we value in life. Okay. And often people live from their values. And these values may be love, or beauty, or charity, or kindness, just for example. And these values are like core, fundamental perceptions, possibly beliefs, possibly knowings, and these are drivers of the behavior. So we could say from the belief comes the behavior, or from the attitude comes the action. This seems to be the case. So I invite you to consider what could be some of your core values and to study and to notice how they show up in your everyday experience. So I'll give an example from my experience. One of my core values is community, or what I like to call tribalizing or specializing. I love it when people come together and connect and share their energy, joy, creativity, presence, and just hang out together in this experience of living, as opposed to everyone being individualistic and trying to do everything alone and separate in their own belief vacuums. Not that I don't celebrate uniqueness and individuality, I do, but I also have a big value orientation towards the tribal experience because it gives us a heightened sense of belonging, togetherness, empowerment, relaxation when it's a healthy tribe. Okay? So my value of tribalizing orientates me to behave in ways where I often find myself in tribal situations. I'm a workshop leader, a guide, and often create dance journeys which involve many people coming together, sharing together, connecting together, enriching their experience together. I like to do group coaching on Zoom. I love to bring people together with their ideas and energy and enthusiasm, questions, so that we can all grow and learn together. I feel there's a huge power in what we can call the sacred circle of tribe. So I'm saying these things, and maybe you hear, maybe you don't hear, but I'm passionate about this value of tribalizing. And as a consequence of this passion and this value, it then reflects in my behavior and actions. My activity, a large part of my activity, is tribalizing and engaging and involved in tribes. Now, it doesn't mean this is the truth. This is a preference, a value preference that makes sense to me, that I resonate with, that vibrates with me, but it doesn't mean necessarily it's a universal truth. Clearly, there are other people who honor their solitude, their aloneness, not in any sense of abandonment, but in a beautiful self way of living, out in the forest and in the Himalayas and in introspection. There are many, many people on this earth who are the antithesis, if you like, of tribal beings. Yeah? Their actions, their behaviors, like somebody meditating in a cave, for example, or somebody goes exploring the world on their own backpack, like to go and get out there by themselves. is somebody who's cherishing their self-orientation and their celebration of their uniqueness, originality, and life possibility. So the value there would be one of self-experience and uniqueness, originality, and this is reflected in the behavior of doing things alone. Now, there's also clearly some people who are alone and lonely who are longing for tribe. Yeah? And there's some people who are overwhelmed by the tribal experience, longing for aloneness. So just because you're holding the value position doesn't always mean it's actively present in the behavior and situations. So I might have a high value of tribalizing. It's important to me, and I do my best to put my heart forward in this and to collaborate with others to co-create beautiful spaces on the dance floor and dinners, hanging out together. I love this tribal connectedness, and it doesn't always go this way. Sometimes I might feel isolated, or I see other people isolating themselves or being isolated by the group, and it doesn't always follow your values. So although your values are guiding your activity and your behaviors, it's not always an exact match because there's so many other variables in play, i.e. other people's perceptions of reality, other people's behavior and activity. Because we're in a co-creative, a co-collaborative participatory experience here. It's not just me alone, it's not just you alone, we're in it together, and there's spheres of influence as we bounce and rub against each other. And when there's a harmonic resonance, when there's an attunement and alignment, it's beautiful. And when there's a complete differentiation, an opposition, an antagonism, it can be very uncomfortable. Okay, so what are we talking about here? Meaning, okay? Meaning. So the first point I want to make there is often our deepest, meaningful experiences are correlated with our core values. But I want us to consider even deeper. Are these values things that have been conditioned into us? Have you been brought up to believe you should be good or well-behaved or act like this and this or that and that? Is it a conditioned response? Or is your value really authentically something to do with your natural state of being? And this is a very interesting inquiry to discover for yourself whether your values are implicit, intrinsic, like are they given as part of the very fabric of your being? So I can only share my experience. I've spent a lot of time in meditation, introspection, self-inquiry, studying, self-studying, observing, noticing, watching, feeling, exploring, adventuring. I've done a lot of inner research in all sorts of different manners, approaches, styles and techniques for many, 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 many years. And carefully observing what is really honestly occurring within my experience. And I've seen sometimes very clearly conditioned responses. So for example, there was a believed fracture in my system, or I believed I was abandoned for all sorts of different reasons, or whether valid or not valid, it was a belief I held to be true, and I behaved according to that belief. And my behavior superimposed onto others that somehow they're also part of this game, in the abandonment game, and I was somehow a victim of that. Yeah. So there's this whole drama being played out from my belief and interpretation and experience and imagined behavior of others. Now I caught myself in the midst of all of this, because I've got to see this several times, because this often happens when we believe something fully, it goes on auto replay, doesn't it? It goes round and round and round and round, and until we can start to notice, hang on, this is a conditioned protocol, if you like. It's a conditioned pattern. So I started to step back from it, challenge it, and recognized the nature of my existence is not abandonment, isolation, people don't love me. That's a superimposition. That's the thought form that I've acquired along the way. Okay, so I released this notion of abandonment, victimization, isolation, people don't love me. And I can tell you that was huge. To take a big breath in, big breath out, and let that go, opened up so much space in my experience. But hang on, if everyone's not loving me, perhaps I am love, I can love others and love existence, and maybe I can start to see and feel and sense love as the primary activity of reality. And that's pretty much how I live a lot of the time, in that primary perception that love is the way. Now, is this just another idea that I've borrowed or acquired, or just found out or discovered? Yep. Or is it something which is more intrinsic to my natural state of being? And I would suggest that this is something which is intrinsic, implicit, belongs to me. That love is not a value that was given to me from outside in, it's something I've discovered that actually is part of me. So this is what I call a value, okay? A value. It's something which is intrinsic and belongs to us, which is distinct in my world to what I call a belief. A belief is something which is conditioned into you, which you've agreed to believe in, and which you perpetuate through your habits of believing and activity of behaviors that come from those beliefs. So for me, there's a very big distinction between values and beliefs, but to really explore for yourself, honestly, because sometimes we mistake a value for a conditioned belief. It's pretty tricky, because I'm saying to you, love is the way, love is what is, but you could hear me, guys, trying to condition us into believing that love is the way, love is this, because you haven't personally realized that for yourself, necessarily. But you might like the idea of it. So it might start for you as a belief. Oh, that's a nice idea. Positive thinking, visualization, great ideas. Yeah, I'm not sure if they're true or if they're part of me, but I'm going to start believing in it to begin with. Now, maybe on the journey of believing, you have this kind of revelation moment where you realize it's much deeper than a belief. It's pre-existing. It is part of the very fabric of your being. And that's what people call realization or insight. So I hope you're following me on this. I'm finding this interesting. The distinction between values, which I'm saying are intrinsic, belong to us, part of us, and beliefs which are superimposed and conditioned. Okay? However beautiful they're portrayed or set up, there's a huge difference between a belief and a value. And the best way to check in on that difference is to see how it actually feels in your system. So as I said, tribalizing for me is one of my primary values. And what occurs in my system as I enter into the value of tribalizing, I feel this natural state of belonging to the species of humanity. And in my consideration, this is a natural state to be in. I'm not trying to prove it to you, I'm not trying to tell you this is the only truth. This is something I've discovered, but it feels I belong to this, it belongs to me. It's not something somebody's told me this is a cool idea, or it's a great philosophy, or a good religion, or the next fashion. You should believe in it. No, it feels like it's something instinctively, intuitively, inspirationally, illuminatively, part of me. Like, I know this. And that's another useful word to bring in here, is that values, which are intrinsic, we know them to be true. I know peace is part of my foundation. I know joy is part of my foundation. I know silence is part of my foundation. And I know these things because I've done some deep diving into the heart of self through meditation and other means and ways and forms and practices to keep discovering over and over and again that when I look within and discover myself in my pure presence, this is what reveals itself as the very fabric of my essence. So maybe this resonates with you right now because you've also discovered this, because you also know this. Yep. And maybe for other people, some of these things you've discovered and some of these you're on the way to discovering, and there's other people who are just outrightly disbelieving all of this. It's not their experience, it's not their truth. Life is hard, it's a struggle, it's desperate, everyone abandons me. And that's your position right now. So maybe we can just honor each other's positions where we are without trying to convince each other of the truth of one being better or worse or indifferent. Just recognize it's like a beautiful relay race. We're all in different places on this circuit of life right now. And once you start to realize that, once I started to realize that, I stopped pushing myself. I stopped this trying, this rush, this desperation, this intensity that I was applying to myself and my journey of evolution. I started to get more in touch with the natural timing of realizing and unfolding revelation that seems to occur all by itself in this natural evolutionary process when we stop trying to force it. Yeah. So this is something I've come to, and I'm saying it to you because perhaps you are receiving this right now as inspiration, yeah, as some kind of, okay, all right, I don't fully know this, but I get a sense it's true. Like there's a beginning of an intuition that what is being shared now, that there are intrinsic values of love, beauty, peace, joy, and they're part of my being, and I can begin to feel into that place that knows that to be true. And that might be the beginning of a journey to let go of the belief systems that are imprisoning that realization. Belief systems like, I'm not good enough, nobody loves me, it's never going to happen, it's not true, I don't believe Guy, blah, 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 blah. All right, there's lots and lots of belief systems that can obstruct and stranglehold us from recognizing the intrinsic values of who and how we really are. Okay? Big breath. So I started this sharing with you now about the nature of meaning, okay, and how we make certain things significant in life, and how those things that we add meaning to, that find significance in, become more of the everyday substance of our reality, what we call our reality. And my way of looking at this right now is that there's two pathways. There's the belief system oriented meaning, which is superimposed ideas, conditioned thought forms, other people's philosophy, religion, politics, family ideas, cultural ideas, people in books and workshops and teachings, and all the ideas that are coming from outside in that you quite like the sound of. Like you've got them, you've owned them, you've acquired them, like you've bought them. Sometimes you have bought them, yeah. And somehow there's an attachment to them that you're willing to say, yep, I believe this, I believe in this, but there's like a willfulness holding that belief in place. And that same willfulness is also defending the behavior when other people don't believe that belief the way that you believe it. Okay, so that's one road, one pathway. There's another pathway, which is what I'm going to call heart responsiveness. Just the natural response of the heart, which knows itself, which has done the work to discover the nature of heart essence, beingness, underneath the personality, the masks, the rules, the roles, all the personality constructs that we get engaged in. Underneath all of that, in our pure, essential awareness, heartful awareness, there's a discovery of what I've been suggesting to you as values. Things that belong to me, belong to us, belong to the species, belong to what it is to be alive. And these foundational values are things like love and beauty and peace and wonder and truth and all these great words that we hear, that some people then turn into beliefs and turn into religions and turn into philosophies. You see? And so you're moving away from the actual vibratory essence of the thing itself, the value itself, and you're turning it into something which is more concrete. And you're kind of putting a circle around it, you're putting a territory around it, and say, no, love belongs to this religion, or compassion belongs to that philosophy, and we circle these things with some kind of territory as we try to take ownership of these beliefs. And what I want to say is that values are not owned. They're not ownable. They intrinsically belong to all of us, equally, universally, cosmically, multidimensionally, all the time, forever and ever and ever. So they're part of the nature and the way of what it is to be fully human. And if they're not owned or in the territory of any one religion or philosophy or country or politics, then there is an intrinsic freedom in that, in the discovery of these values, which absolutely connect us to the profound nature of existence and each other and ourselves. But we don't need to put a territory around it, to protect it, to assert dominance in a way of holding this territory. Now these things, these values, are just freedom. Yeah, freedom. They're freely part of us. They're naturally part of us. This is my way of experiencing this. I'm just saying it as it is for me. I don't want you to believe in what I'm saying. All right? I don't want you to make a belief for this, or even think that I'm trying to convince you of something. I'm just sharing my experience and inviting you into exploring this for yourself, to see what you consider and have realized and have insight into your experience. But this other path, just to complete the communication about this, the path of values equally manifests what can be considered to be a meaningful way of being, but it's a meaning which is not held together by beliefs. It's not held together by stories or conditions or cultures or religions or politics or philosophy or anything. It doesn't need any holding together. It's a meaningful knowingness that life itself is something very much to be appreciated and be grateful for. And it's kind of like an intrinsic meaning which is based in knowing. It's very, very hard to talk about it, and that's not me avoiding talking about it, because to talk about it would be to suggest I'm trying to put it into a belief system and say this is the way and these are the words that represent the way. Now, a meaning that arises from a value, from your intrinsic nature, is just something you know. Yeah? It's an alignment, there's a resonance, there's an honesty, there's a naturalness. And there's no willfulness, there's no dominance, there's no separation, there's no force. It's just I naturally know that life is meaningful and beautiful and wonderful, and I'm grateful to be here in this experience. And I feel the deep value in this. Yeah? And it's not a value based on superimpositions or trying or efforting or somebody else's expectations of me, or cultures or family or religion's expectations. It's a natural emerging from a deep space in our heart which knows value, which knows the essence of life, and just wants to share that because we can, because it's intrinsically part of the natural motivation of life to express what it knows to be true, which is what I've been doing here in this call. This is what I know to be true, and there's a natural impulse to share this and express this and open this and reveal this and have this be visible, because desire is to be known. There's a wonderful simple poem by Rumi. I'm a hidden treasure and I love to be known. It's only hidden because we haven't realized it yet. You know, it's actually intrinsically part of us and always has been part of us. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you can hear the simplicity in this communication, the distinction between values and beliefs, between what is intrinsic and what is conditioned, and how both create meaning, but one meaning is held together through some kind of dominance, and the other is naturally meaningful all by itself without any effort. So, yeah, wishing you a beautiful day wherever you are, in your world, in your reality, in your perception, in your experience. And thank you very much for listening. Yeah, bye-bye for now.